Good morning. U.S. troops are busy at work this morning, building a safe haven in northern Iraq for Kurdish refugees. The troops are anxious to get the tent communities up and the refugees settled to avoid a repeat of Sunday's incident when one refugee was killed after Turkish troops opened fire to quell a food riot. The worldwide help for the Kurds continues. The situation is still described as critical today, Monday, April 22nd, 1991.
From NBC News, this is Today with Bryant Gumbel, Catherine Couric, and Joe Garagiola.
And good morning, everyone. Bryant's off for another day.
Right.
So is
Doesn't look
Joe.
like New York there either.
Willard's off and Faith is sick. So I guess Studio 3B in New York is somewhat of a ghost town this morning. Sounds like a ghost town. Company business has me in Burbank this morning, but luckily I'm not alone. NBC News correspondent Keith Morrison is here.
I don't know if that's luckily or not.
I was going to say good morning, or is it good night? It is the middle of the night here, after all.
It is a very odd day.
Well, we're glad you're here, Keith.
Nice of you to roll by, by the way. You're looking very roly-poly these days.
Oh, thank you. Gosh, starting the morning off on a very nice note.
Oh, that's lovely.
Nice
We like that.
Nice to see you, too. We'll begin this morning by talking to the new female head of the National Institutes of Health about a massive research project involving women. Many say it's about time. We'll also begin a series of reports on fossil fuels and the environment. We'll see how efforts to clean up LA's smog is costing some people their job. And we'll hear from Audrey Hepburn as well as Arnold Schwarzenegger. But first, let's go back to New York and start with the morning's top news story and Ann Curry, who's sitting in for Faith Daniels. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning, Katie and Keith. Good morning, everybody. Nearly 2 months after Iraq's war with the Allies came to an end, the U.S. finds itself being drawn back into active military involvement. American troops are on a mercy mission inside Iraq, and the Bush administration is caught at cross purposes. Jim Miklashevsky joins us now from the White House. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Ann. President Bush has pledged not to get the U.S. bogged down in a Vietnam-style quagmire. But as long as U.S. troops remain in Iraq, it's always a possibility. And an encounter Sunday had all the potential for disaster. As the U.S. Marines moved into northern Iraq, they encountered heavily armed Iraqi military police who weren't supposed to be there. The Iraqis retreated, but the Marines said it was tense. The standoff is an example of how quickly and easily things could go wrong, and why the Bush administration wants the Marines out of northern Iraq as soon as possible.
We have no desire to be there on a long-term, permanent basis.
But the U.S. may have no choice. President Bush wants a United Nations force to take over protection for the Kurds in the north, but UN officials say they have no authority to provide that security. The longer U.S. troops remain, the greater the risk they'll get dragged into Iraq's civil war.
And we are not interested in creating enclaves, if you will, from which the Kurds can attack the Iraqis. We would clearly discourage that.
There's also concern Saddam Hussein is now stronger than ever inside Iraq. In an effort to turn up the heat, the administration is considering charging Saddam with war crimes and trying him in absentia. With all this uncertainty, President Bush is scrambling now, not only to save the Kurds, but to preserve the U.S. victory. Ann?
Thanks a lot, Jim. Many refugees are reluctant to return from the mountains along the borders with Turkey and Iran, despite the camps being built for them. There have been continuing reports of violence between refugees and Turkish troops over food and other desperately needed supplies. The BBC's Triona Holden reports.
A supply route into Iraq. Once the havens have been established, this road will carry hundreds of vehicles with equipment and relief supplies for the Kurds. The convoys are heading here. This vast plain a few miles into Iraq, near the town of Zaku, is the site chosen for the first safe haven. The tents have already started going up, the first of many hundreds that will sprawl across this valley in the next few days, ready for the tens of thousands of refugees who are expected to come down from the mountains.
What we have to do first is ensure that they feel secure coming back here, and we think we're doing that.
In the adjacent town of Zaku today, where the anti-Saddam Hussein feeling is still all too apparent, there was evidence of tension. A party of Marines and journalists came face to face with hundreds of Iraqi police and soldiers. Neither side quite knew what to make of this unexpected confrontation.
Surprised. We just arrived yesterday into the city. And it's the first time I've seen the Iraqi military in this kind of mood.
The Americans, who've been welcomed by the local people, say Baghdad is contravening its agreement by bringing in the extra police, although they haven't decided what to do about it yet.
That was Triana Holden from the BBC. Secretary of State Baker is taking some time out from the effort to push Israel and its Arab neighbors closer to the peace table. He's making his second post-war visit to Kuwait, emphasizing the economy and playing down the human rights controversy. Critics say the royal regime has done little to release its grip on Kuwait's government. Mikhail Gorbachev has come home from an ambitious foreign trip of his own to face some strong new political challenges. More from Bob Abernathy in Moscow.
Soviet Prime Minister Valentin Pavlov told legislators today if they fail to approve his and President Gorbachev's latest anti-crisis proposals, the country's economy will collapse. But all the government's proposals are under increasing attack from both left and right.
We want the immediate convening of the Congress.
Hardliners agreed over the weekend to try to force a meeting of the full National Congress. They want a state of emergency declared, and some of them would like Gorbachev ousted as president. Meanwhile, coal miners who want better economic conditions and Gorbachev's resignation continue their strike, now in its 8th week. Supporting strikes have been called for tomorrow and Friday. Gorbachev returned Saturday from Japan and Korea to face a battle today over his economic program, a battle tomorrow over his plan to try to hold the Soviet Union together, and a review Wednesday of his work as head of the Communist Party. Today would have been Lenin's 121st birthday, and Gorbachev and other leaders paid their respects. With all this country's troubles, Gorbachev is widely unpopular, but so far there has emerged no generally supported alternative. Bob Abernathy, NBC News, Moscow.
On the foreign financial markets today, the Tokyo Stock Exchange closed with a loss. And prices were also lower as trading opened in London. Capitol Hill takes a close look at the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation this week. They're concerned that the agency that insures American banks is running out of money and that taxpayers may have to make a large deposit to bail it out. AT&T tried again over the weekend to come to merger terms with NCR, but it got cut off. The telephone giant came up with a stock deal it called its best offer. NCR says the hang-up involved unstable stock prices. In Louisville, Kentucky, it's New Year's Eve, Mardi Gras, and the 4th of July all rolled into one, and it goes on for the next 2 weeks. Weekend fireworks kicked off the countdown to the Kentucky Derby, the first jewel in thoroughbred horse racing's Triple Crown. The Run for the Roses is Saturday, May 4th. Well, it's 7 minutes after the hour. I'm Ann Curry. Now back to Katie and Keith in Burbank. And, you know, I'll have you know, it's not completely a ghost town here in Studio 3B.
Well,
right. And you're there.
It cannot be.
You're there, and some other folks are there as well.
Really?
Yes. Willard Scott's off doing something earthy for Earth Day, which is kind of a scary thought, isn't it, Keith?
It is.
But Al Roker is spending it indoors back in New York, and he's keeping an eye on the weather for us this morning. Hi, Al.
Hi, Al.
Hi, Katie. Hi, Keith. How you doing?
Al?
And I can see that right now out there, you've got broken clouds and 54 degrees at Burbank International Airport. Well, how it's sunny at 4 a.m., I don't know. Anyway, we've got a storm watch to talk about in southern, I should say, eastern Texas until 9 a.m. Well, they've got some very strong thunderstorms going there, so that's going to be until 9 a.m. Central Daylight Time. Texarkana, the biggest city right there, being affected. What about the rest of the country? Take a look on our 3D satellite picture. Dancing Don in our weather office has a nice swirl to show you. A big low-pressure system in the northeast feeding in showers in the east coast, and as you move interior sections, some snows as well. Rest of the country, here's how it's shaping up. We are looking for a lot of wet weather from central California right across the midsection of the country. Little hole of sunshine over the upper Ohio Valley, but then more rains along the eastern seaboard. Some Great Lakes looking at some gale warnings, and we're going to be expecting some sunshine down south, some heavy thunderstorms again down in Texas. That's what's going on around the country. Here's what's happening in your neck of the woods.
Well, we're going to try and keep the rain away for a day or two. By Wednesday, we do have rain showers in the forecast. Partly sunny today, high of 59. Then for tonight, mostly cloudy, overnight low of 40 with a northwest wind, 8 to 17 miles an hour.
Just about 7:10, now back to Burbank and Katie.
Thanks a lot, Al. Nice haircut. On Close-Up this morning, the largest study in medical history of women and disease. Although statistics show that women are more prone to disease than men, up until now, the majority of medical research has focused on men. The new director of the National Institutes for Health plans on changing that. Dr. Bernadine Healy is launching a 10-year, multi-million-dollar study of life-threatening illnesses in women, using hundreds of thousands of women patients nationwide. Dr. Healy joins us this morning from NBC affiliate KYC-TV in Cleveland. Dr. Healy, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Can you tell us a little bit about the focus of this study?
Well, this particular study brings together two important components. One is a fundamental base of knowledge that's been gathered for years throughout our medical establishment. And the second is very practical questions about how to have healthy women and what are the unique problems and the unique medical dimensions of being a woman that means you have to plan strategies which are tailored for women.
You'll be focusing, I understand, on postmenopausal women, is that correct?
Well, most of the problems in women's health come in the postmenopausal period, and the major causes of death in women are cancer, particularly breast and colorectal cancer and lung cancer, cardiovascular disease, which means heart disease and stroke, and thirdly, osteoporosis, which is the thinning of the bones, which is a major cause of morbidity, fractures, frailty, and also death in women. And our plan is to look at the total woman, the total person, and look at the preventive strategies, which interestingly enough reinforce each other. What will help osteoporosis often helps the heart. Sometimes they compete with each other, and we've got to ask and answer those questions.
What else, Dr. Healy, do you plan to do with the findings? What would you like to accomplish with the research that you find?
Well, our goal is to come up with very practical information, to translate that magnificent base of fundamental knowledge that we've been acquiring and translate it into very simple and fundamental practical terms, like should women be taking postmenopausal hormone replacement therapy? Will that help their bones? Will that help their heart? And what is the risk of increased incidence of cancer if women are taking hormones? What's the proper hormone replacement therapy? What kind of a diet should she be on? Should we be taking calcium supplements? What about vitamins? What about fat in the diet? How strict a fat reduction is necessary? These are the kinds of practical issues. Exercise, is that good for your bones? Is it good for your heart? And we hope that we will be able to give information that women across the country from all socioeconomic groups, culturally sensitive information that will help them to lead healthier lives.
Why have women been so ignored for so long when it comes to research projects at NIH and other institutions for that matter?
Well, Katie, in fairness, 95% of the research that we do at NIH, which is research done throughout the country, is relevant to women. If you're looking at basic biochemistry, cell biology, molecular biology, the pathophysiology of disease, virtually all of that work is relevant to women. In the area of translation of that information to the patient, the clinical trial, the applied science, women have often been neglected, in part because their disease tends to come when they're much older, in part because there has been a prevailing sense that men are the normative standard, that if you have information in men, it can be translated to women. But our state of science is such that we now recognize elderly women have different problems. The nature of disease in women has unique dimensions. The hormone status of women plays a role in areas like breast cancer, in heart disease, in vascular biology, in their bones, and that this is very characteristic of women. To get that information, you can't study men. You have to study women.
But and only 13% of the NIH budget is spent on diseases that affect women. That's true, isn't it?
No, that is a little misinformation. If you look at the entire NIH budget and you say what percentage of that budget is exclusively focusing on women's diseases, the number is about 13% women. If you say the same question for men, it's about 5% exclusively men's disease, like prostate cancer. If you look at the total NIH budget and say what percentage of that $9 billion that we spend every year in medical research is relevant to diseases that afflict women, it's about 95% of our budget. But if you look at clinical trials, women have, in selected examples and glaring examples, been at times neglected. That's what we're going to correct.
Obviously, this is a step in the right direction. What else do you intend to do to make up for lost time, to counter the imbalance, if you will?
Well, the way we have designed this study, and I must say, this is not my study. This is a study which involves probably 6 or 7 of our institutes at NIH, with the leadership of those institutes very enthusiastic about it. This has been in their minds. This has been something which has been in the works for some time. What we're doing is we're pulling it all together in a rather novel approach, which is to put multiple strategies together which will affect multiple diseases, looking at them together, looking at the total patient, and bringing together the categorical disease institutes, the Heart Institute, the Arthritis Institute, to work together to solve a single problem.
Well, Dr. Healy, a lot of us will be very anxious to see the results of this study. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Coming up, Secretary of State James Baker is in Israel, and we'll get a preview rather, from a top Israeli official. At 7:15, this is Today on NBC.
We reported earlier that Secretary of State James Baker has now left for a second post-war trip to Kuwait. But his meetings with Israeli officials are what his Middle East trip are all about in the larger context, an effort to bring about peace in the region. It has been met by some resistance from the Israeli leadership, who have so far refused to commit on what have been described as key matters concerning a peace conference. Deputy Foreign Minister Benjamin Netanyahu joins us now from Jerusalem to talk about this. Good morning, Mr. Netanyahu.
Good morning.
Israel is seen, at this point at least in the negotiations, as something of a roadblock. What does Israel have against the proposals the United States has made for a peace conference in the Middle East?
I think you have it somewhat backwards. The proposal came from us, and we said, look, the Arabs have created a state of war against us from the time of Israel's birth. That's close to half a century. In the wake of the Gulf War, they surely must realize that war, even war against Arabs, but certainly war against Israel, could be counterproductive for them as much as for us. And we said, why don't you come to the peace table? They've always said, well, we don't want to come alone for the initial meeting. And we said, all right, come together for the initial meeting, and then we'll break up into separate groups, that is bilateral negotiations with each Arab country. That was our proposal. It was quite far-reaching because it, in fact, was a slight deviation, even a considerable deviation from what we've always said, direct negotiations from the very start, even the preliminary meeting. We went that distance, and we're waiting now to see the Arab response.
Yes, but the United States would like also to get European nations involved, would like to get the Soviet Union involved, would like to get the United Nations involved. What do you have against those people being involved in the discussion?
Well, I'm not going to comment on your assessment of the American position. I'm not sure at all that is necessarily the American position. I think that the Arabs are demanding that because what they're trying to avoid all these years is precisely the kind of face-to-face peace negotiations that imply recognition. You know, if you want to make peace, if you and I had a conflict, if we had gone to war, then if we wanted to make peace, we would sit down opposite one another. We wouldn't invite the whole neighborhood or the whole world. We'd actually get down and sit and talk with one another and resolve our outstanding differences. And that's what the Arab countries have avoided doing.
Precisely, but you want to make peace also with the Palestinians who are living in territory now occupied by Israel, and yet you refuse to sit down and talk to the Arabs who live in East Jerusalem, the Palestinians there. You're refusing to talk to representatives of the PLO. How does that contribute to the peace process?
I think we should parse out two problems here. One is Jerusalem. You're quite right. Jerusalem for us is not negotiable because Jerusalem has been the capital of the Jewish people for the last 3,000 years. That's where David and Saul and the prophets of Israel prayed and prophesied, and I don't think that's something that anyone in Israel is going to seriously discuss. But there are many other Palestinian Arabs there, and you know the great majority, 95%, live outside Jerusalem, and we're prepared to talk to any one of them, providing they meet only one condition, that they recognize that we exist. If they say, well, you don't exist, and in fact, we're going to use the negotiations to make sure that you're in the hole in the ground, that's hardly a candidate for peace. Any Arab, Palestinian or other, who recognizes Israel's right to exist is a partner for instant negotiations as far as we're concerned.
Just very quickly, sir, are you concerned because of the kind of reaction around the world that Israel will be blamed if there's a collapse in these talks?
You know, I've become already an old hand in this, and it seems that no matter how generous our peace offer is, the international community finds a way to shift the onus on us and to say that it's not the Arabs who have imposed war on Israel, threatening our very existence for the last 50 years, but the other way around. I don't know how historians will treat that one day, but I know that we're trying to present the truth and get to peace.
Thank you, Mr. Netanyahu. This is Today on NBC, and we'll be right back.
Coming up, Audrey Hepburn. But first, a station break. We're back at 7:30 in beautiful downtown Burbank this morning. I'm Catherine Couric.
That wasn't Burbank. Burbank is not quite that pretty.
But we're in Burbank.
Yes, we are.
And I'm here with Keith Morris, and Brian Gumbel will be back tomorrow. And just ahead, our Sportsman of the Week honorees include the UCLA's women's softball team. Sorry, you guys.
Got it right.
Why am I saying basketball? Which has racked up 3 NCAA championships in a row. Keith?
And as part of our observance of Earth Day, we begin a 3-part series on energy and what the use of fossil fuels is doing to the environment. If we can't stop using them, we should at least start using them more wisely. That's a kind of a different cast on the same issues. So we'll look at that.
Okay, and we'll look at a program here in Los Angeles County called Family Preservation, which keeps families together by teaching young mothers how to stop abusing their children. But first, the news back in New York with Ann Curry, who's in this morning for Faith Daniels. Good morning again, Ann.
Good morning, you two. Good morning again, everybody. U.S. Marines are building refugee camps this morning in northern Iraq. Construction on the first of the camps began Sunday along the Iraq-Turkey border, with Iraqi troops withdrawing as U.S. troops arrived. But inside Turkey, where tens of thousands of Kurds are crowded into makeshift camps, Turkish troops trying to quell a food riot opened fire on the Kurds, killing one. More than 800,000 Kurds are in the camp, and although they are receiving relief aid, officials say it is still inadequate. Secretary of State James Baker arrives in Kuwait today, where he'll view firsthand those burning oil wells. Baker will also meet with Kuwait's ruling family. The White House is reportedly concerned that the Emirates' leaders are not moving fast enough on political reform. The secretary has been in the Mideast trying to arrange an Arab-Israeli peace conference. More trouble for Mikhail Gorbachev today. Distressed by the Soviet president's handling of the country's ethnic and economic problems, hardliners have launched a petition drive to get Parliament to declare a state of emergency. This morning, the government offered its anti-crisis program calling for further price increases, privatization, and a ban on all political strikes. But hardliners want more power to control the country's worsening problems. Reformers threaten a general strike if a state of emergency is declared. Today is Earth Day, and Americans from coast to coast are turning their attention to the environment. Festivities will include teach-ins, cleanups, and fundraisers. The Earth is beset by many ecological problems, and some caused by population growth, others aggravated by it. In one wildlife refuge in Washington State, there's a battle going on between 2 endangered species protected by law. Scott Miller of KING-TV has more.
As the sun burns off the morning mist, a curtain rises on one of the richest pockets of wildlife in urban King County. It's nesting time for hundreds of birds, among them the great blue heron. These heron rookeries are getting harder to find around Puget Sound, and even this one is threatened by encroaching development. This year, the herons here face an additional threat from an age-old nemesis. A bald eagle has discovered the rookery and has found heron eggs to be easy pickings. Birdwatchers have seen the eagle raid at least a third of the nests and devour dozens of eggs.
I've become very fond of the herons, and I can see and feel the panic that they have.
According to biologists, such predation is normal, even healthy in nature. But in this urban world,
I wonder if the herons can tolerate that combination of natural predation as well as human encroachment.
Wildlife officials say there's nothing they can do to protect the herons from eagles. The city of Renton is trying to buy some of the land around the rookery to protect the herons from human beings. Scott Miller for NBC News.
It's 34 minutes past the hour. Now back to Burbank and Katie and Keith.
Thanks a lot, Ann.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, Willard Scott is enjoying, I guess, the end of a long weekend. I could use his agent. How about you?
Well, you know, what I was wondering about, actually, I hate to get serious on you here because I know that when you do this you don't like to, but are there no birthdays when Willard's away? Al? Do you have no birthdays?
No birthdays when Willard's away.
Well, why is that?
We
Does
save
people
the birthdays.
stop having birthdays?
It's Willard's gig, and so we save it for Willard, right, Al?
Fine.
Al?
Oh, it's my turn? Okay. I wasn't sure. No, there are birthdays, but we upped the ante to 125. so nobody's here. Anyway, week's temperatures below normal out on the East Coast, above normal in the midsection of the country, and out west, it's going to be a lot cooler. What about the precipitation? Here's how it shapes up. Very, very wet for much of the country. In fact, the only spot that's going to be normal is the Northeast, the Mid-Atlantic states, and on up into New England. But how about today? Let's take a look at what's going on out there. Again, we've got a strong storm system in eastern Texas, heavy thunderstorms working their way all the way into Arkansas and Oklahoma and Louisiana. Those folks don't need the rain, but they're going to continue to get socked with it. Showers also around the Gulf Coast. A lot of wet weather from the Mid-Atlantic states all the way on up into New England. Interior sections of New York could see some snows as well. As you move into the plain states and the mid-Mississippi Valley, showers and thunderstorms. Rain stretching straight across right on into northern California. Sunshine and mild up in the northwest, going to be nice there. Sunny and mild in the southwest as well. That's what's going on around the country. Here's what's happening in your neck of the woods.
Well, we're going to try and keep the rain away for a day or two. By Wednesday, we do have rain showers in the forecast. Partly sunny today, high of 59. Then for tonight, mostly cloudy, overnight low of 40 with a northwest wind, 8 to 17 miles an hour.
Coming up on 7:36, the Sportsman of the Week is brought to you by Isuzu. For features, styling, and price, there's no comparison. Now here's Katie.
Thanks a lot, Al. If you're in Los Angeles and want tickets to see the winningest team in town, you're not going to see the Lakers or the Dodgers. You're going to see UCLA's women's softball team, and they are our Sportsman of the Week. For 3 years in a row, this team has won the NCAA National Championship, and they're well on their way to winning an historic fourth. In softball, it's a pitching game.
I know when I get on the mound that, you know, as long as I hold the other team to no runs or no hits even, then our team should always come out on top. And luckily we have a great bunch of girls on this ball club, and with all their support, we should always come out winning.
When they see me, a lot of times people laugh at first because I whip my head around and I make a noise, and it's nothing I developed myself. Like, it just happened naturally.
We have three of the best who have that capability of striking anyone out at any given time or having them hit their pitch. And so if you have that happen, and you have a fairly decent defense behind you, or you have kids who can hit the ball and score runs, chances are you're going to win.
And here they are, just back from Oregon, the three pitchers of this amazing team: Heather Compton, Lisa Fernandez, and Dee Dee Wyman. Good morning. How are y'all doing this morning? You look great. Raring to go at this early hour. You guys played a triple header and a double header this weekend. You must be exhausted, but more importantly, did you win?
Yes.
Yep.
You did? How was it?
Great.
It's pretty tough. Playing
Really?
5 games this weekend. Kind of
I know,
tiring.
you must be exhausted. How do you play that many games in such a short period of time and get, and maintain your stamina?
Got to rely on the endurance and hopefully the off-season training that we do and the training that we do during the year. Hopefully it can carry us through, and we'll have enough energy to play all 5 games.
What else keeps you guys motivated to continue on, because you've got some games ahead of you as well?
It takes a lot of team unity. Like, the team has to work together well to keep each other up and motivated to go out there and pitch every game. All the three of us have to back each other up as well as our other teammates.
Now, you guys are all on athletic scholarships, is that right?
Right.
And you've all done very well. Does it bother you that more people don't come out to cheer you on, that a lot of people don't come out and watch women's softball?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we don't get a lot of publicity for the sport, and we are competing against the guys who, of course, have been playing forever, and, they do get a lot of fan support. But I think with the help of these shows, that people are coming, a lot more people are coming to our games, and, with the publicity that we do get, it helps to bring a lot of fans to come watch us play.
Have you guys all been playing since you were little tykes on the girls' softball teams?
Yeah.
So you've been playing a long time, and you're sophomores, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a couple more years to go. What do you do afterwards? I mean, are you going to... There really aren't many options for you guys except for to do this in your leisure time, isn't that right?
Yes. Softball gives you a lot, though. I mean, off the field, you learn how to work with people and be sociable, and on the scholarship, you get a free education. Hopefully you can take that somewhere in your future.
Now, as a young player, I was told to stay on the bench. What advice do you have for young players?
Oh, gosh, work hard and learn from the older girls, definitely. That's definitely what I did.
Well, continued luck to you all. Thank you so much for getting up so early and joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Key's back in a moment with our series on energy and the environment after this.